Happy New Year, everybody! You've reached the No Name Cinema Society, the film review show that dares to dig just a little bit deeper. It is Monday, January 3rd, 2022, if you can believe it. And you have reached our Sound Off, our freeform segment. This is the 52nd time we've done this. A bunch of different segments where we talk about all different things about the film industry. Hi, everybody. My name is Jonathan Betzler. I'm one of your hosts for this evening. I'm here at my home in Los Angeles, at least for now. I've been going back and forth a lot lately. And I've got a couple guys here tonight to do the Sound Off with me. First, from our 1942 in review, he's a Jeopardy champ, he's an actor, he's a filmmaker, and he's a draft dodger. Jim Carroll is here.
Look, that was only one time, and I don't really know if I should be called a filmmaker for that. So everything.
Did you get it, jokes? Did you get the joke, fans? Nice job, Jim. I got it. I appreciated it. It might be too subtle for some of our fans. Speaking of subtle and fans, from our 1970 review, he's a father with a tooth collection that is 100 plus years old. The greatest sound designer in the Northern Hemisphere, Matty P is here.
Hi, Jonathan. Hello, Jim. What's going on?
It's always nice when he says hello to the other person. I always think that's cool because no one else does that except for Matty. It's like his trademark. I don't think anyone else could. Matty, you're back in your pink paradise, I see.
Don't mischaracterize me, Jonathan.
Those intro explanations will become apparent when we do the second run a little later on. First, I just want to show you our schedule for this, which has been our 68th series of episodes. It started on Thursday, December 23rd, with a review of Spider-Man: No Way Home, and continued last Monday, December 27th, with our Indie Spotlight Other People from 2016, and continue this past Thursday, December 30th, with our classic movie discussion of Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. And of course, tonight is the Sound Off, and there you see just some of the things that we are going to do tonight. Who's excited for the Sound Off? Woo!
So excited.
So excited. It's time to find out who's drinking with me, guys. What do you guys got? Got my Elysian? Jim, tell me you're with me tonight. Are you going to drink with us tonight? Jim's drinking with us tonight. That's amazing. It looks like wine. Jim, is that wine?
Not wine. It's a 9-pin. It's a New York hard cider, so it's good.
Matty, what do you got?
Also hard cider, but it's hard fruit punch.
That's right. That's the Dua Lipa thing again, right? Truly.
So good, I've got to do it again.
Oh, there you go. All right. Well, cheers to you guys. I get to cheers all my co-hosts tonight and all out there in the drinking audience. Here is the drinking slide. When we do these things on the show, you will drink to them. Anytime I say all-time contrivance, contrive, verisimilitude, or diegesis, or anytime Matt makes fun of me, and at press time, Jim has nothing on the drinking list. Audience seems to have forgotten you again, Jim.
I mean, it's just the way it is.
Well, I was going to call it to the fans. Give something. What does Jim do a lot that either annoys you or you want to drink to? That call it out. Let us know on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. Matty, do you remember what the first segment of a Sound Off usually is?
I'm going to say top 5.
Nope.
No. I got it.
Yeah.
This day in history.
It is time for This Day in History. Woo! On this day in history, January 3rd in 1920, one of the biggest days in sports history, the Boston Red Sox sell Babe Ruth to the Yankees 102 years ago today for the sum of $125,000. The Yankees would win their first World Series 3 years later, but the Red Sox wouldn't win again for another 84 years in what was known forever as the Curse of the Bambino. On this day, January 3rd in 1977, Apple Computer was incorporated 45 years ago today by Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. And if you think about it, this was a moment that would come to shape all of our lives in more ways than one in the years to come after that. And on this day, January 3rd, 2016, in No Name Cinema Society history, it was our 37th series of episodes, back when we did all 4 shows in one night. It started with our current feature, Rogue One, that night. This is back when Jay Money and Davey were on the show. And then our indie that night was Young Adult from director Jason Reitman. We had a big classic that night. Citizen Kane was our classic. And our Sound Off that night that closed out the evening was episode 37.4, in which I counted down the top 5 films with unlikable protagonists. And that was 6 years ago on this night. And birthdays today, ladies and gentlemen. Matt Ross, director and actor Matt Ross, turns 52 today. He was the director of an indie we did just a couple indies ago, Captain Fantastic. He's perhaps best known as an actor on Mike Judge's Silicon Valley as the quirky billionaire genius investor. So, guys, that's this day in history for January 3rd. What do you guys think?
What would history have been like if Babe Ruth were a better pitcher?
A better pitcher?
Yes, wasn't that his position at the Reds in Boston?
It was one of his positions, but he was a great pitcher. He was one of the best pitchers.
Really?
Yes.
So why did the Red Sox get rid of him?
Money. They were basically short on cash. The owner, Henry Frazee, was going bankrupt, and he needed cash quick, I think, to settle his gambling debts. So he started selling off players, and it forever haunted the city of Boston, thankfully, for years after that. Amazingly enough, this is why he's considered the greatest player of all time. He remains one of the top 5 left-handed pitchers of all time.
See, that's good trivia.
So he was not a bad pitcher. We have not seen another player like Babe Ruth that was both a hitter and a pitcher until the Angels' Shohei Ohtani, who won the MVP award. I had season tickets to the Angels this year, and I got to see his MVP season. The first player since Babe Ruth to hit over 30 home runs and have an ERA under 4 in the same season. It's kind of amazing. Anyway, that's this day in history for January 3rd. Very exciting stuff, Matty.
Oh, yeah. That's why I come here.
Excellent. Now, it's time for the next segment. I think Jim is going to be really excited for this segment. I think Matt is petrified for this segment, but the fans love it, so we'll see how it goes. I'll try and go easy on you, Matty. It's time for the movie game, which is a very exciting game. One of us names a movie, actor, or director. The next person has to name the actor or director of the movie, or a movie that actor or director was a part of. If I said Star Wars, Matty P would then say Harrison Ford, Jim would say Indiana Jones, so forth and so on, and we go on. Now, if you name a movie or an actor or director, be sure that you can name another actor that was in that movie or another movie that actor was in, or you cannot win. In other words, if Jim said Indiana Jones and I couldn't remember anybody else from Indiana Jones, Raiders Lost Ark, and Matt couldn't remember the director or anybody else from Indiana Jones, Jim also did not remember anybody else from Indiana Jones, we start all over and that's a wash.
First of all, I'm insulted by that insinuation.
I'm trying to have a very basic explanation of the rules. I'm going for the basic films. That's why I went with Star Wars and Indiana Jones. I know that you know the director of Indiana Jones. Matt even knows the director of Indiana Jones. The point is that you have to be able to answer your own question in order to officially win. Whoever you stumped, they come back in if you can't answer your own question. It sounds more convoluted than it is. Matty P, is this clear to you?
It makes sense.
Matty P is not as good with names. Jim's a Jeopardy champion. So on this show, we played it a bunch, and I've only been beaten twice. 3 times. Devin beat me twice in the same show, and George beat me once.
We'll see.
We will see. If we are going well, or I'm too easy on Matt or whatever, the game can go long. So I'm going to put a 5-minute timer on it. And if we hit the 5-minute, I'll try and stump people because I try and go easy to begin with. And then, so I'll try and stump people after that. Otherwise, I might pitch some softballs. I won't try and stump anybody unless it's starting to go long. And if it's just me and Jim over and over again, I'll maybe try and end it quickly. So, Matty, I'm going to start with you to keep it easy. Keeping it in this set of episodes, I'm going to start you off with Psycho.
Mm-hmm.
Director or an actor?
Anthony Perkins.
Anthony Perkins to Jim.
Black Hole.
The Black Hole. I believe Ernest Borgnine is in The Black Hole, is he not?
He is.
Poor Matty. Ernest Borgnine to Matty.
The original Frankenstein.
Ernest Borgnine is not in the original Frankenstein from 1931 or 2.
The second original Frankenstein.
No, I'm afraid not, Matty. It was a good effort, but you're not out yet because I would need to name another Ernest Borgnine film, which I can. Let's see if Jim can.
Oh, another, The Dirty Dozen.
I will go with John Cassavetes.
Oh, man, I knew you were going to go John Cassavetes.
Well, we did a top 5 John Cassavetes in episode 57.4, and The Dirty Dozen was on it.
No, I'm trying to go for the movie that we watched. Yes, it was Faces, right?
Yes. Faces is the name of the film. You're done for. I will go with John Marley, also in Faces.
Yeah, that's it.
Matty might be able to name a John Marley film because John Marley got his one and only Oscar nomination in 1970 as Best Supporting Actor for a film that Matty liked.
Yeah, it's called the no, Sing for My Daughter, Husband, Father. Don't Sing for My Husband, Father. No,
that's not John Marley. John Marley played Alan McGraw's father in Love Story.
Oh yeah,
he got his Oscar nomination.
Oh, right.
John Marley's other claim to fame, Jim, is the movie producer who got in The Godfather, who
horse's head.
woke up to a horse's head. Yes, that's John Marley, and I won round 1 of the movie game. Matt, are you impressed?
No, I think you can go on for hours.
Usually do 3 rounds, so we got 2 more to go, and I'm going to let Jim start with this one because I'm going to keeping it in this set of episodes. Let's start them off with Other People, the indie from.
Okay, Jesse Plemons and Other
Excellent. People. Matty P, do you know the actor Jesse Plemons?
I don't. Your turn, Jonathan. Let's see what you got.
I'm going to go with Game Night.
Game Night. That was Amy Poehler?
No, that was not Amy Poehler. Rachel McAdams and Jason Bateman and Kyle Chandler would be in Game Night from 2018, I think it came out.
Oh, I'm thinking of a different movie.
Yes, you're thinking of where they turn their house into a
casino,
gambling environment. Yeah, with I think Will Ferrell's in that. Maddie, I'm going to start the next round off with you. Again, keeping in tonight's show because we got a second run coming up. So I'm going to start with Maddie because presumably he's watched this film. Maddie, Jenny from 1970.
All right. Well, let's just go for the easy one with Alan Alda.
Jim, film with Alan Alda.
And Alan Alda, I almost said MASH.
No Alan Alda films at all? He does have an Oscar nomination. He was in a Best Picture nominee in 2019 that made your top 10. All right.
Sorry.
It's okay for me. The film that made your top 10 of 2019 that he is in is Marriage Story. He plays Adam Driver's. He got his Oscar nomination for the Martin Scorsese film, The Aviator. And he's also directed movies. In fact, he directed a movie from our 1986 in review called Sweet Liberty. Alan Alda's been in a lot of different stuff over the years, but yes, mainly known for television. So I will go with The Aviator, and it's The Aviator to you.
I'll just go with Cate Blanchett. Is that right?
It is right, and she did win an Oscar for The Aviator. So I'll go to her other Oscar win in Blue Jasmine. Well, and you can also name a director, by the way.
Yeah, I won't get myself in trouble. Let's just go Woody Allen and get out of it. Easy.
All right, Woody Allen. So I'll go Annie Hall.
Okay. Oh, is Sidney Lumet in that? No.
No. Are you thinking Sidney Pollack?
Maybe I am. That's what I meant. But he's not in that anyway.
Sidney Lumet's not really an actor, and both are wrong, technically. Both are wrong. Sidney Pollack is in Husbands and Wives, I believe. That's the Woody Allen film that he did.
Yeah. I'm thinking of the actor that's walking towards the camera in the opening shot. I'm not sure who that is, though. I forget.
I don't think you're thinking of Annie Hall, because the opening shot is just Woody Allen in front of a blank background telling a Groucho Marx jokes, I believe. I don't want to be part of a club that would have me as a member. Mm-hmm. I think that's the way it starts.
I was trying to think of the person driving the car in the rain, the famous actor who I'm blanking on.
Christopher Walken.
Yeah, that's the one I wanted to say.
That is Annie Hall. Yes, he is in that. Christopher Walken, a rare person, one of 4 or 5 people, I'm trying to remember, who were in back-to-back Best Picture winners, Annie Hall and The Deer Hunter after that.
The shot I'm talking about, though, where they were like really far away, it's a film school shot because they talk from like a block away, but we can still hear them very close up. And he's talking about Jew. Did you hear the Jew?
Yes, that was him and Tony Roberts were in that scene. Woody Allen and Tony Roberts.
What movie is that?
That's Annie Hall.
Yeah.
It's not in the beginning. It's in the middle.
Oh, all right. That's the shot I was trying to think.
That's what confused me when you said it was in the beginning. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was the movie game. First time for Jim and Matt to play. Great job, guys. Thank you for participating.
So good.
Participating feels about right.
Matty P, we had a good volley there at the end.
That was incredible.
It's time for the next segment. Great job to both of you guys. And it's time for our second run. We haven't done this in a while, I don't think. All right, I don't remember. But the segment comes up when one of us talks about a movie and another one hasn't seen it and then comes back to talk about it on the sound off. So tonight's second run, as we talked about in the movie game, is born from our 1970 review. On the first sound off of this season, episode 65.4, Matt and I counted down our top 5 films of 1970. And here's some of what I had to say about my number 3 film of 1970. Take a look. A couple of times on the 1970 show, I insinuated that there was a movie that I adored, but I was worried it wouldn't come up, and it didn't come up because it wasn't number 1 in any of the categories that we covered. I love the film, and it was my biggest prize in the project, but I couldn't in good conscience say it was better than the top 2 films that I have coming up that I named on that show for should have won Best Picture or should have been nominated for Best Picture. This little film that blew me away stars 2 second-generation actors who had the majority of their success in their career on television. And I'm pleased to finally reveal the title of this film is the little remembered film Jenny, starring Marlo Thomas and Alan Alda, and directed by George Bloomfield. It's the kind of gem that makes these projects worthwhile to me. It's low budget for sure, but it has the spirit of those independent films that take advantage of their limitations and manage to strip artifice away to find truth and honesty. The grittiness of 1970 New York City, the claustrophobia of the on-location small spaces, the rough lighting and sound all contribute to the overall sense of verisimilitude. Yay! Verisimilitude, everybody. The key to the film is the scene work. For me, nearly 3/4 of the scenes in the film feature just Alda and Thomas, and both of them are extraordinary, albeit in very different ways. Bloomfield knows how to shoot each scene in just the right way, specific to those scenes. The shots themselves offer insight into the moments, whether it's subtext or foreshadowing or social commentary. It's exactly the kind of thought that you want put into shot selection. Of course, you'd expect Alan Alda to be good. He's very good, and in spite of a lack of physical handicaps or monologues, he's just a regular guy in an extreme situation that he makes very real. Marla Thomas is a different story altogether. The whole movie I watched it, I couldn't quite put my finger on her character. Is she overly sheltered or charmingly naive? Is she pathological? Is she crazy or just a little bit off? Or maybe just a dreamer? Regardless, I'll say this for her. She's impressively consistent in all of these choices that kept me on my toes with this character that I couldn't quite define, and I liked not being able to define her. I flirted with the idea of calling her the best actress of 1970 in a close call, but it's such a strange and unique characterization, I couldn't quite bring myself to go there. Perhaps the best thing about the film is the storytelling. I had no idea the whole time of the trajectory the narrative was taking, and that's an increasingly rare phenomenon given how many movies I watch. It could have gone in a million different directions, and the one it chose still wound up surprising me and still being real. In many ways, it's the kind of film that I like to make, so I can appreciate the one that's so well executed on such a limited budget. If I were a one-man nominating committee, I would give it 5 nominations. Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor for Alan Alda, Best Actress for Marlo Thomas, and Best Song for a song called Queen of Feeling. I wouldn't have it win in any of those categories, as you might imagine, because I didn't come up on the show, but I would give it 5 nominations. Matty P, it's an obscure little movie. I wonder if you got around to it. Jenny.
I didn't see it, but I want to now. It's a great recommendation.
And so his second run was born. He said he wanted to see it. He did, and now he's brought it back to talk about it, referring, of course, to the film Jenny from director George Bloomfield, starring the aforementioned Alan Alda and Marlo Thomas. So we heard some of what I had to say about it. I might repeat some of it as we go, as we discuss it further. But I'm so excited to hear what Matty P has to say about Jenny. What did you think first time viewing?
I liked it a lot. The first half better than the second half. I kind of liked it less and less towards the end, mostly because of Alan Alda's character. But as a film, I noticed a lot of fun details, especially relating to sound I was picking up. And there's a lot of insider jokes for filmmakers because it's about a filmmaker, and they spend a decent amount of time on set. A little bit of lingo, a little bit of inside baseball is kind of fun to watch. I thought she was good. She was really good. Yeah, I liked it all the way until Alan Alda started to rub me the wrong way. Not the acting. I shouldn't say his name.
Right.
The character rubbed me the wrong way.
Right, which I get. And it sort of falls in line with, like, the character is doing what you don't want them to do, but they do it anyway. I think it's plausible that he does what he does, and the acting justifies it. Like, not justifies it morally. It makes sense that he would do that. And you're disappointed in him. At the same time, I think it's realistic, and it was effective, I think, for me. And also, like, I liked how it wasn't pat. It didn't go down the expected course. That it didn't tie it up nicely so that we felt good. Like, it almost felt more realistic to me. You know what I mean? So I hear what you're saying in terms of my emotional engagement, but cerebrally, I like the choice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it going to those places. You know, when you say arc, like a character arc, you envision an arc, like a shape like this. And I felt like that was more like a sawtooth wave where just like up and then like a sharp angle in a different direction, almost without cause. And that's kind of what I had an issue with. I didn't have, and it happened like again to rectify that, to kind of pull back. And it was a little like the sharp turns were a little too sharp for me.
Interesting. So that sounds like a script or edit issue. I didn't feel that. I mean, in terms of the arc, I mean, I think it's sometimes fascinating and believable when characters don't fulfill their arc. They're growing, and suddenly they regress. There's realism to that. They're following the normal 3-act structure, but we are expecting that growth to fulfill itself or what have you. Leaving Las Vegas is another one that comes to mind, where you almost feel like she's eventually going to talk him out of doing what he wants to do. and he's growing and growing and growing, and then all of a sudden everything falls apart. That to me can be really fascinating and interesting, and in this case was surprising for me. I rewatched it last night.
Yep.
I wasn't going to, but I'm like, I kind of wanted to because I liked it so much, and I noticed the sound more in this one. The sound design was outstanding. So much detail for such a small film about off-screen space sound. I thought that was amazing for something at this level.
Yeah, there's a lot of attention paid to the craft. You're right, in a surprising way, given the type of movie that it is, meaning sort of a relationship arc in a smaller movie. Generally, it's more script and dialogue based, but this had a lot of craft to it.
And I talked about a little bit about that in that episode. I think it was 65.4. I said, I talked about some of the shot choices and shot selection. Jim, you watched my little talk about it from earlier this year where I named it my number 3 film. Is that correct?
Yes.
Just so the audience knows, we told Jim that we were going to do this, and he didn't have to, but he opted to join in. He watched Jenny as well, so I'm curious what he thinks about my number 3 film of 1970.
So it's funny with what Matty was saying. I sort of had the opposite reaction where it was a little bit slow going for me. I felt kind of off center. I wasn't really sure in the beginning where it was going. It took me a while, but when I latched into the characters, when I got into sort of the story, I really enjoyed it. Even with the choices that were being made, even how it ended up panning out, I was with the characters for that journey. I liked it more and more as it went on. Yes, Alan Alda's character does make some definite questionable moral choices.
Again, it totally tracks for his generation, for the character that he established.
100%. The deal that they made in his mind is different than the deal that she made. And the expectations, I think, for both sides were not really well thought out. And both of them came to that with their own expectations. And that's really the heart of the conflict, is what each of them wants and where they end up at the end. Also,
and in fairness to him, she was not. This is what I think is so fascinating. I talked a little bit about it when I talked about it in episode 65.4. Marla Thomas's characterization is a little off. You know what I mean? And she's I don't want to say she's not playing with the full deck, but she's not being honest with herself, really, more than anything.
What I thought was really interesting about the film is it didn't give you any help. When she told you the story, she's just making stuff up. Is she a liar? Is this like a Munchausen thing? As the movie gets on and you start to understand her reasoning and what she wants.
I had the similar feeling to you in terms of like I was uncentered with the movie in the early going.
That's exactly it.
And a lot of it has to do with her characterization, because I'm like, what exactly is she doing? I couldn't quite put my finger on her. Is she over-sheltered or charmingly naive, or is she a pathological liar? Is she just plain crazy? I couldn't quite figure it out. And it sort of peels away at her an onion. And that's why it's so fascinating to me about her performance in particular. For someone that I never quite figured out, like I didn't like have all the answers right away. She was consistent in having this sort of ambiguous approach to this character. I was just fascinated by the work she was doing in that regard.
Yep.
Jim, how do you react now that you've seen it to a lot of my comments from the episode 65.4?
I mean, I think I agree with a lot of them. I really enjoyed the performances. I really enjoyed the movie.
Just to be clear, no one had ever heard of this movie before, right? Like this is okay.
No.
Because I hadn't. And if I hadn't, I assume you guys hadn't. I said it was the big surprise for me out of all the films I watched from 1970. And Matt, I think I watched over 100, Matty.
I think you broke your own record.
This was the one was like, holy cow, this came out of nowhere. And it touched me and it fascinated me. The thing that I called out in episode 65.4, and I just want to call out again because rewatching it again is the thing that I take the most from it. And it's a word I use a lot, but this is a great example of it. Scene work. This is a great example of scene work on film. Most of the film is between two actors, Alan Alda and Marlo Thomas. The way that he frames it, camera movement when it's necessary, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. A lot of times it'll be a single shot and he sort of flows around. Tons of frame within the frame throughout the film. The way he blocks the actors for the camera adds meaning. There's this scene where she's sitting on bed being a little needy. The TV's on in the far background, and there's a window. He's pacing back and forth. They're having a discussion/argument. There's no cuts in that scene. The camera occasionally pans with him when he's feeling a little rambunctious. It's exquisitely done. Just like a great way to like work with the actors and find the best shot for the scene. That is like textbook scene work that when I refer to it, that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, there's great moments when he's high and he's laughing and you see the change on her face the indeterminate, do I laugh with this? I'm really hurt by this, but I'm still going to try and be a good wife. Still going to try and play along till it breaks her and she has to leave.
You're still figuring her out at that point too, because she's like, "What's a joint?"
And you're like, how innocent is she?
That's why I said, is she over sheltered? Like, you can't quite put a finger on her, but she's very consistent in that regard. There's moments of quirkiness in the film, like with the Vince Gardini character, the dad with the tooth collection. It's grounded quirk, I find. I certainly buy it.
The only part that really took me out of it a little bit was when it started to get into her fantasy life a little bit, and they had those little montage sequences. By the end, I knew it was happening because it really starts to leave like that sort of grounded reality that we had spent so much time in.
It reminded me of like a super well done student film from a craft point of view, but such limited resources. And what I think is so special about it is what it accomplished in spite of its resource. I think it had less than a lot of the indie films that we review in the show and that we see. Like Other People was the last indie you and I reviewed. This had a way smaller budget than that. I'm willing to bet that those scenes were shot inside George Bloomfield's apartment and a friend's apartment. They basically had a similar budget to what we had on Intersection, Jim. Matt, you helped me out with some sound work on Intersection as well, so you know what I'm talking about. It's a web series that we did years ago. That's the kind of level that we're talking about, and the level of work here based on that, I think, is extraordinary. I called it a gem, and I stand by it.
I agree. It was definitely a surprise.
Were you nervous heading into it? Like, I guess this goes for both of you.
The first 10 minutes, I was kind of like, what the hell is this? Like I said, I started to warm up to it. I had a moment of like, is this an hour and a half movie that's going to feel like 4 hours?
But Matty P, it doesn't sound like you regret watching it.
No, not at all. It was great. It was a great movie. I mean, it didn't take me, I wasn't scared at all. I'm not sure why I would have been.
I was recently seeing this girl who talks a lot about HSPs, which are highly sensitive people. That's what this film really started me thinking about. It's something that sort of came up a little bit in our discussion of Two Lovers, James Gray's film from 2009. We reviewed it in episode 57.2. And I think this would be a good double feature with that, because there's something about identifying with these people that are so sensitive. The littlest thing can affect them deeply. And I feel like Jenny's in that category. Jenny as a character, and the way Marla Thomas played the character. She's so sensitive that she sort of builds this fantasy world to help cope with a lot of her expectations, which granted are often unfair expectations. You talked about the laughing and the marijuana scene, and she's so sensitive to that because she doesn't understand what's going on with him being high and everything. It's not really personal. She takes it real personally and has to invent this fantasy world in order to cope with the real one. It was very effective to me in that way, and in sort of identifying with and empathizing with these supposed HSPs, highly sensitive people. My number one film of last year, I don't know if you remember, Jim, what my number one film of last year was.
I cannot remember what your number one film of last year was.
It's a film called 9 Days. That too almost calls it out directly. It actually like talks about sensitive people in this way. This film, that film, and Two Lovers are in the same ilk in the sense that they're embracing these people that we need to maybe nurture a little bit more instead of judging them for being as sensitive as they are, because a lot of their sensitivity can be useful in many situations. Their sensitivity leads to extreme empathy and kindness and also artfulness. Some of the best artists are highly sensitive people. So instead of, judging these people or being frustrated with them for their neediness or how easily they get upset or things like that, is to maybe like try and have compassion and embrace these people a little bit more.
I hear what you're saying, and I like the whole topic of what you're talking about. But in this movie in particular, I feel like it took the entire movie for her to reach her breaking point, and all the steps along the way, she was kind of just taking all these things. And the marijuana scene in particular, felt it took a long time of him basically making fun of her in front of her for her to leave the room, and that's all she did is left the room, and it was a very appropriate thing for her to do. And only until the apartment scene towards the end did she really take her own action. So I don't know if she's been highly sensitive the entire movie. That's not what I took away.
I disagree in the sense that I feel like she is, but she combats it. Her defense mechanism to it is this fantasy world where she flat out makes stuff up about a supposed husband that died, about her life with Delano and his relation to Vietnam. You get the sense that until somebody bursts that bubble, she believes a lot of those lies. She holds on to them very thoroughly. So I think that's fascinating. All right, I'm going to move on, guys. Anything else on Jenny?
No, I think we covered it.
Good.
So I'm going to ask you guys, recommend that you can send it. I sent you guys a file of the film. I want to bring this film back. All right, Matty, you've been waiting all night for this. What time is it for?
Oh, top 5.
It's time for JB's top 5 film performances by Saturday Night Live alums. And man, we are going to fight on this one, I think. This is inspired by a review of the indie Other People, which featured a Spirit Award-winning performance from Molly Shannon. Some of the rules for this particular top 5, as we agreed upon, is it must be an actual member of the cast, which means that somebody like Steve Martin would be ineligible. Steve Martin was a lead writer for a long time, guested frequently, and has hosted among the most times ever, but was never an official cast member. 5 former cast members have received acting Oscar nominations historically, but none have won. Only one of those performances will make this list as it happens. Only one of my top 5 did receive an Oscar nomination. I think it's also potentially noteworthy that 3 of the 5 performances on my list are technically supporting performances. So with that in mind, are you guys ready to start the top 5?
Yep.
Woo.
So it's going to be very controversial. I don't think you guys are going to like most of what I have on my list, so it'll be really interesting. And I think mostly, Jim, you're going to hate what I omit. So number 5 in my top 5 film performances by Saturday Night Live alums. This first one is a film that used to be a top 100 film for me, but just fell off the latest iteration of the list. It's still a great film, though, and one of the more nuanced performances in the career of Billy Crystal for his work in When Harry Met Sally. I had a number of performances in this number 5 spot and flip-flopped a few times on what would go here. And the thing all of the performances in consideration had in common was that they were variations on the actor's persona. Not a big stretch for any of them. Shtick almost. But I went here because even though there's a lot of Billy and Harry, he's a more complete characterization than a lot of the other performances I was considering. There's heart and foibles and details mixed in with his normal humor. Yes, he makes Nora Ephron's words his own, but it's still very genuine and it still works in a terrific film that still holds up. Jim, as I cut to the photo, it looks like you had a big reaction.
One of the very first things that I put down on my list, because I think it is a wonderful performance. The most important thing for Harry, you have to A, understand why Sally likes him, and B, understand why Sally doesn't immediately want to get with him, like those red flags. Billy Crystal does a great job of showing you that full character and giving you everything, the good and the bad. It is a great performance.
Jim almost pitched it better than I did. I actually like what he said better than what I said. I was trying to be brief. He added some really good points. Now, as we go along, he's going to be like, why was Billy Crystal only at 5? He liked that one so much. It's like all downhill from here now. I don't know. Matty P, Billy Crystal, and When Harry Met Sally.
I like Jim's better also.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Matt making fun of me, so everybody drinks. Bastard, Matty P. Jim, I'm a little nervous for the rest of this list now, but I'm glad we're 1 for 1. We might be 2 for 2 for this next one because, maybe you just don't like the order. I actually, this film wasn't initially going to make the list, but after rewatching it for the other night for our review, I just remembered how good Molly Shannon was in Other People. Jim and I talked about the performance in detail last week, but just to summarize, it's the moments unrelated to her terminal illness that I found the most profound, but she still nailed the slow and painful decline of this sick mother character. It's a great performance in a movie full of them and the best of her career, as we said the other night, and Jim agreed with that at least. And as we also said the other night, Other People from 2016 is currently available on Netflix. After the show, Jim even thanked me for recommending the film to him. Jim, Molly Shannon.
Also on my list, I think she absolutely deserves her place on this list. She knocked that role out of the park. Again, a role that would be easy.
It could have been very maudlin.
Yeah, you could absolutely. You could play too maudlin, and the fact that she's still able to find humor and anger all throughout those places gives a full, well-rounded character. It was really moving.
2 for 2. It's funny thing is, Jim, when I first wrote down, usually every time you guys assign a top 5, I'll write down my first initial thoughts, and then I'll go and do research and watch other films or rewatch films. I rewatched Fletch today just in case. And spoiler alert, Fletch isn't going to make it. But I remembered liking Fletch, and that was mistaken. And so in rewatching this the other night, I'm like, oh, this is good enough. This is one of the best performances. And so it's going to make the list. Matty P wasn't on that episode that we reviewed it. I don't suppose there's any chance you saw Other People from 2016 on Netflix.
I haven't seen it, but
have you heard of it at least?
Well, I just looked it up and it doesn't look familiar, although the title was. I guess I don't know it.
And it features Jesse Plemons, of course, who we started one of the rounds of our movie game, and that brought that full circle. And Jim knows this, Matty doesn't, and some of the audience may. In 2016, I named Jesse Plemons as the best actor of 2016. 2016 for his work and other people. Jim liked that performance too.
Yep.
Time for number 3. We're blowing through them. I love it. There's no way this next performance is going to be on Jim's list. This next performance comes from a film we reviewed on the show last year, and it's not an indie or a classic. It was a current feature. So a film from 2020 is going to make this list. Not only that, but we gave the film a bad review, a really bad review. But all of us on that show acknowledged that this supporting performance was by far the best thing about the terrible film. I even named her as the second best supporting actress of 2020, right behind Dominique Fishback from Judas and the Black Messiah. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to knock your socks off. I've got Kristen Wiig in Wonder Woman 1984 as one of the best performances by a Saturday Night Live alum. As Barbara/Cheetah, her insecurities and deep-seated rage felt more real than anything else in the film. It was identifiable and her journey was palpable. Some of that is on the page, but I thought Wiig brought a lot to it, especially in navigating the metamorphosis. She was so good, in fact, that when I went on my daily walk after the film, I started wondering if a film that was more focused on her character as the only villain, if that might have been more compelling to me, as if she were an extreme representative of the justifiable rage represented by the Me Too movement, and Wonder Woman would have to stop her even though she understands the root of her evolution. But that's not the movie that they wanted to make. Now, some of you are thinking, well, Kristen Wiig is one of the SNL alums that's an Oscar nominee. That's true, but she was nominated for writing Bridesmaids. She has not been nominated as an actor, so she's not one of the 5 that I was referring to earlier. There's a slight chance that Matty P has seen Wonder Woman 1984.
I have seen it. I don't know. I did not like the movie at all, and I'm trying to separate her from the movie because none of the movie stuck out to me, and so I don't know. I didn't enjoy her at the time. It just seemed all silly to me. But I guess what you're saying, I'm trying to think back. Sure, she was good in that movie.
He's willing to acknowledge the possibility, but he did not enjoy it. All of us on the review did. It was me, Devin, and Alex. And I recommend our review, even though we trashed the film. The only nice things we had to say about Kristen Wiig. And at the end of the year, when evaluating performance, she stood out to me. I'm a little nervous about how he's gonna rake me across the coals. Jim, Kristen Wiig.
No, I'm not going to rake you across the coals. I will say, I think before the full-on cheetah transformation, she does a better job. Once she gets all of the makeup on, it flattens out into like a little bit more standard villainy.
And that's not even that long, though. I mean, like,
she's full cheated for maybe 5 minutes.
In the middle of a fight scene during most of that. It wasn't that big a deal.
What she did for that movie, she really showed us what gets lost in making that wish, how much her character changes, and how it changes in degrees. She did a really good job of conveying that as a touchstone for the audience. We needed to see how that goes and that complete character transformation. As a performance, I can see that. And she was actually one of the names that I had down for specifically that role.
Am I 3 for 3 so far, Jim? It's unbelievable.
I took her off my list because I was like, there's no way he's going to let me get by with this.
I have often been able to separate performance in movie because the movie we reviewed on the show right after that, the current feature, was Judas and the Black Messiah, which I also gave a bad review. But I also acknowledged that Dominique Fishback was transcendent in that movie in spite of all my script problems with the film. I don't hate Judas and the Black Messiah as much as I hate Wonder Woman 1984, but I can notice when an actor is doing something, even in a bad movie. So I try to be aware of that because I feel like Oscar nominees or Oscar voters will discount a movie altogether, even if the movie's terrible, in spite of some great performance work. I don't like to do that. I like to evaluate the performance on its own. And I think what Kristen Wiig is doing here is actually a great lesson for actors in how an actor can help navigate a character arc. Because a lot of what she does is all the subtlety and nuance of her choices, and where she brings it, she takes what's on the page and makes something more out of it, crystallizing an arc where that might have been a little bit, and given the rest of the script, I imagine it was a little hazier around the edges. Her arc was very, very vivid to me and impactful.
There's the line that she has where she's asking Diana if she's ever been in love. She turns around and she's like, I'm falling in love every day. I think it'd be really easy to throw that line away or to make it something different. But Kristen Wiig made it heartbreaking.
I just had a brainstorm here, guys. Straight line. There's a straight line between Jenny and Barbara in Wonder Woman 1984.
That's a show.
Barbara is one of those HSPs, and they both are falling in love a lot, and they both are very sensitive to how people react to them on a day-to-day basis. They're both getting their heart broken left and right because of how sensitive they are. Obviously, Barbara's evolution is far different than Jenny's. Jenny's living in a very different time. I think they're starting from a very similar place. And Barbara, too, has her own sort of little, I wouldn't call them fantasies, but sort of flights of fancy, maybe, that she uses to cope through day-to-day existence. I just tied it back to our second run from 1970. How do you like that, Matty?
That's why you're the host.
His comic timing is on tonight. Matty, I want to give you the last word. Anything else on what we were saying about Kristen Wiig and Wonder Woman 1984?
It's a good discussion. I like what you're saying, that people will dismiss one part of a film because the whole film is not very good. And I agree with that. I think it's pretty easy to do that.
Well, and I also want to acknowledge good work. If someone's doing good work and everyone else around there isn't necessarily, for whatever reason.
As filmmakers, when we work on something that's not great, what effort do you put in that either adds to it or makes it better? Or do you just sort of realize that it's going nowhere, so no matter what you do, it doesn't matter? And those are the two rungs you can kind of go to when you're working on something that...
Very easy for an actor to check out. Also, like, actors also, like, will phone it in because it's a comic book movie. Like, I just need to give them the bare minimum. She doesn't do that here. Superhero movies have evolved where a lot of actors have taken a little more seriously. I think there is something special about being potentially aware that the rest of the movie's not working, but still bringing your all.
And I meant us personally as well, not just actors that we see, but you and I and all filmmakers that work on stuff that at the time we're like, well, this isn't going anywhere, but it's my gig for the day. What do I do about that? Do I elevate it or do I not?
Do the best you can do. Absolutely. Hey, look, as a non-union AD, I can't remember a film that I worked on that I thought was any good, to be honest with you. At least not as an AD. All right, Jim, I'm going to move on for potentially the most controversial one. You ready?
I'm ready.
There's no way this is going to make Jim's list. Although I've said that 3 times already, and I've been over so far. But we'll see just how simpatico Jim and I are. When I named this film to my top 10 films of 2017, many eyebrows were raised. Even more when I called out the performance in this film as being one of the best supporting performances of that year. But now that this actor is a big-time Emmy winner, people are taking Jason Sudeikis realistically. Ladies and gentlemen, my number 2 performance is the Jason Sudeikis in the highly original sci-fi comedy Colossal, opposite Anne Hathaway. The film is about bullying and the mistreatment of women and the rage that results from it. What makes it special is that it manages to convey that in a fun, entertaining, and cinematic way, which makes it even more effective for me. And a big part of that is the surprising performance by Jason Sudeikis, especially because it's a performance that doesn't seem unique or special as you're watching it initially, but as certain things unravel and get revealed, you see all that he was building, and I think it's a crazy difficult thing to pull off without being obvious or telegraphing. There's ultimately a lot of deep pain that drives him throughout the film, even if we don't see it until late, and it manifests itself in different ways as the film evolves. I think it's a wonder to behold, especially on second viewing. So another out-of-the-box one, guys. I bet you guys are surprised. Jason Sudeikis in Colossal. Matty P, have you seen Colossal?
I don't know this movie. I'm surprised I don't because of who's in it. It's a pretty big movie, it seems like, but I don't know it at all.
It came out in March or April of 2017, and the movie surprised me as well as my number 8 or 9 film from 2017. I actually don't remember. Wow. It's 8 or 9 in that vicinity. I think it's 8. But Jim, the movie's up Jim's alley. He probably hated it though. Colossal.
I've never seen it. In fact, I've never even heard of it.
It's amazing. You guys haven't seen the movie where Anne Hathaway realizes that she's controlling a monster in Tokyo?
Actually, yes. I know the movie that you're talking about, but I've never seen it. I really like Jason Sudeikis as an actor. The last several things that he's done before Ted Lasso, he's trying to work with stuff that's deeper than just the surface. Yeah, I can absolutely see him turning in a really good nuanced performance, even if it's something that I've never seen, so I can't really judge.
It's a nuanced performance in a very high concept kind of movie. That's what I love about it, is what it reveals in spite of its sort of outlandish premise. I think it winds up being really wonderful and certainly, worth uncovering. I guess we're going to move on, guys, because nobody's seen Colossal.
Yeah.
The fans right now are going crazy. I can imagine the YouTube comments just ready to tear me a new one. But a lot of people that complained about Colossal being in my top 10 did not see Colossal. They just complained because all those, because Call Me By Your Name and 3 Billboards didn't make my top 10 list of 2017 because I saw 100 plus movies from 2017 and I liked it better, and they didn't see Colossal and I did. to all you complainers about there, see the movie before you really have something to say. Jim, is that fair?
That is very fair.
Now, there's only one left. And I imagine there's a lot of films on Jim's list that he's like, it's going to be one of these, but which one is he leaving off? And which famous Saturday Night Live actors are not going to get called out in this top 5? Because there's a ton of omissions here. Obviously, there has to be on a top 5. I said in the beginning of the top 5, one of the performances on my list was one of the 5 Oscar-nominated performances from Saturday Night Live alums. This film has come up on another top 5 before, not mine, but when Alex joined me to do his own top 5 list of films written by William Goldman, he named this film, and I was critical of the film, but I can't say anything bad about the extraordinary performance of Jim.
Is it Billy Crystal?
I can't repeat actors. The extraordinary performance of Robert Downey Jr.
He's on my list.
Chapter. Many people forget that RDJ was an official cast member on Saturday Night Live from 1985 to 1986, just one season. On episode 62.4, when this film made Alex's top 5 films written by William Goldman, I complained about the sprawl of the film. I did not, however, complain about the next level immersive performance of Robert Downey Jr. In this film, he finally delivers on the untethered promise he showed in a lot of his previous work, like Less Than Zero or Air America, films in which he feels good but slightly out of control. Under the direction of Sir Richard Attenborough, Downey not only delivers on the tremendously difficult physicality of someone like Chaplin, the combination of acrobatic grace with comic timing, but he's also incredibly nuanced in the emotional beats of this complex, flawed individual. He lost the Oscar to Al Pacino for Scent of a Woman, a performance that I still enjoy, although most critics have turned against it. As much as I liked Al in that film, if I were a voter in 1992, I might have had to go with Robert Downey Jr. for this extraordinary piece of acting in Chaplin. Matty, have you seen Chaplin?
No.
You've heard of it, though?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, you see, of course. There's a lot of audience members that maybe didn't. Jim, it sounded like this was on your list.
That not only was it on my list, when you first pitched this idea, like, hey, there are 3 ideas, I specifically brought up Robert Downey Jr. to ask, would he be okay for this as an example, thinking of this film? He was the first person that I thought of. The other 2 people that I sort of had a top 3 when you were like, oh, guess. So it was Robert Downey Jr., Eddie Murphy, and Bill Murray. I figured it would have been one of those 3.
That brings us to the omissions, and I know Matty has one performance that he liked. It's funny because there are 2 obvious submissions to me, and Eddie Murphy wasn't one of them. So I'm not as prepared for an Eddie Murphy argument, but I can't think of an Eddie Murphy performance. I wrote down Trading Places. Again, like, it's more of the shtick, whereas these other performances, almost all of them are much more fleshed out characters. Billy Ray Valentine is a fun creation. It's really just like an extension of Eddie Murphy. It's a great movie. I love the film. I think it made my top 5 films of 1983 on my old show, Film Revision, but I don't think performance-wise it measures up to these other performances.
Eddie Murphy was the only person I had 2 in for, because there's Trading Places and then there's Thunder Early from Dreamgirls.
And that's the Oscar-nominated performance, and I don't think that's a good performance, personally, for me.
I didn't mind it so much. I thought he did a good job with it. Part of the reason it was good was because it was a character that we were seeing Eddie build, not, to your comment from Billy Ray Valentine, more of the stickiness.
Right. Even with the one you haven't seen, it's hard to put him above some of the other performances I mentioned in terms of
100%.
Okay. Eddie Murphy in Trading Places would certainly make a top 10, probably. Yeah. I'd have to think more about it. Assuming, again, that we weren't repeating actors. The one that I'm prepared for is Bill Murray. That is the one where I thought people were going to complain about. And like Billy Crystal, a number of his performances were just variations on a theme. Rushmore is maybe a little different. It's good. I don't think it's better or more impactful than the 5 performances I discussed. And I bet you this might be Matty's favorite that he was alluding to earlier. I think it's really hard to stand out performance-wise in a Wes Anderson film, personally, because I think it's such a controlled environment. It's such a unique world. I don't acknowledge a lot of the performances in his film. Even when I like the films, and I don't always, the characters are not necessarily 3-dimensional as much as they're pawns in Wes Anderson's world. I'm sorry to say. And that's not so much a complaint as an observation, but it's why Rushmore didn't make the list. The one I was considering the most was Ghostbusters, actually. I really couldn't get over how free he was as Peter Venkman. If you think about all his comic creations, his interpretation of Peter Venkman is variations on a theme as far as his persona is concerned. It adds more to the enjoyment of that film than a lot of his other performances. I think Venkman is just perfection of what Murray does, as opposed to Stripes and Meatballs. It's slightly more grown up than those films, slightly more professional, slightly more well-rounded. When I looked at Ghostbusters versus When Harry Met Sally, I ultimately felt Crystal had less shtick and more humanity. That's why I didn't choose Bill Murray here.
It's funny. I went with Lost in Translation over any of the Wes Anderson.
Yeah, and I don't like that film or performance either. I don't think it's bad. I just didn't like it. That's the Oscar-nominated one. I think it's fine. I like him better in Ghostbusters. I think it's a perfection of what he'd been building for during that period of his career. I agree that Lost in Translation is the shift. It's good. I just don't think it's as detailed or nuanced as some of these other performances. I do like him in Ghostbusters. I think his Ghostbusters performance is almost perfect. I just found Billy Crystal as maybe a little more impactful and heartfelt.
I think that's fair. I think you're right about the Wes Anderson movies.
Well, I have a quick counterpoint there. I can think of Rushmore as a movie, and then I can think of Bill Murray as the character, and they both have very strong different parts of the memory of that movie. So I'd say it's not a forgettable thing, even though I know you're saying that his characters are pawns in his movies. I think Bill Murray was great in that movie. And I didn't consider it. And also Ghostbusters I didn't consider, but they're both great choices. He's great. I'd put him on the top of my list if I had thought of it.
Well, I still disagree with the Rushmore thing. I mean, and we'll just agree to disagree on that, because I do think that in Rushmore, he's perfect for that movie, just auditing against these other performances, because that's what I'm evaluating here. I just don't think he's bringing as much to the table as these 5 other actors. So Matty, if Bill Murray wasn't your choice, you intimated earlier that you had one performance that you were thinking about.
I was thinking of Adam Sandler in Punch Drunk Love.
That is the other one that I am prepared to argue. There's 2 Adam Sandler performances that I thought people would bring up. Punch Drunk Love is one of them. I think it's a good film. I like the film. I don't like the performance. I think it's the same shtick in a better film, well utilized by PTA, but not a great performance in my opinion. And the other performance I thought people would mention is the recent performance in Uncut Gems, which is one of Devin's favorites of 2019. I think it's a variation on his shtick. It's not the same shtick, but it's a variation. I actually find his work in Uncut Gems to be a one-note performance. I still think his best acting work might be as Theo's only white friend on The Cosby Show. I love Happy Gilmore and Billy Madison very, very much. But in terms of acting, as we were evaluating for this top 5, I don't consider Adam Sandler highly at all.
You said the Punch Drunk Love role is a variation of the shtick of another role?
No, I think it's a variation on Adam Sandler's shtick. I think P.T. Anderson did a great job of knowing what Adam Sandler did and building a character based on that. But I don't think Adam Sandler's doing anything special or unique or insightful. It's almost like the Wes Anderson argument in the sense that it's perfect for the film. P.T. Anderson utilizes the Adam Sandler persona to his advantage, but I don't think it's as three-dimensional or detailed performances as some of these other ones. And I don't think Punch Drunk Love would make a top 10 for me performance-wise, although I do like the film, and I want to make that point. I think Philip Seymour Hoffman in Punch Drunk Love is a great performance. But I mean, I think, and it's a good example of a real actor versus an Adam Sandler kind of thing. It sounds harsh, real actor, but Jim, Adam Sandler in either Punch Drunk Love or Uncut Gems.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're both good performances. It's nice to see that somebody can direct Adam Sandler. I don't mean that as much of a burn as it sounds.
You and I are inadvertently burning Adam Sandler. I didn't mean to, but
the fact that he is directable and can be harnessed and used in a leading performance like that is a credit to him by itself.
Is it a credit to him or is it a credit to P.T. Anderson?
If somebody told me, in the late 90s that you were going to take Adam Sandler and put him into a leading role in an art house movie, I don't think I would have taken that bet.
So guys, we can re-argue that Bill Murray or Adam Sandler or Eddie Murphy if you want. Are there other performances? I mean, were there more on your list, Jim, or anything others that you're thinking of before we move on?
The only one that I think is worth throwing out there, it's my wild card performance, was Amy Poehler in Inside Out, which is an animated. So we're talking about voice acting only. You're right.
She does great work. I did not consider that for that reason. That's tough to compare vocal performances. I mean, that's why no one's been nominated for an Oscar. I don't know if you remember this. There was all this talk about Robin Williams getting a supporting actor nomination for Aladdin, and it didn't wind up happening, and it hasn't happened since. And I think there's a reason for that. It's a different art. I would have a hard time putting us on this list on principle, not based on quality of the work.
Look, I know that I was taking a risk with it. this is something that really hit home for me, her work in that movie. And I think it at least deserved a mention.
I would definitely give it an honorable mention as almost like a different category, but for sure. I mean, like, it's great work. Inside Out made my top 10 of 2015.
I will take that as a win.
But you can understand why I didn't consider it.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Matty P, anything else on any other performances, or do you still want to talk about Adam Sandler more?
No, I don't get your argument against it, but I'm fine with it. I don't understand the logic. I don't understand why you're saying it is an Adam Sandler shtick. It's like the exact opposite of that. He's in a movie that he doesn't belong in. He's in a role he's never done before, and he's playing this character that has nothing to do with what we've seen him in before.
Oh, I disagree. That faux anger thing that Adam Sandler does in a lot of his characters when he gets angry is very similar.
I thought it was a very good performance that built from years of pent-up tension and being misrepresented and not having his own voice. It just sort of bubbled the whole movie in a way that came to a head at some point. Pretty solid movie, pretty solid performance. And not what I expected from Adam Sandler.
I disagree about the performance. It almost felt like a student film kind of level performance for me. Like, I just felt like he was not the quality of actor. And it felt to me even then as a gimmick for PTA, like, maybe trying to get a bigger box office. I don't feel like I saw the detail of the bubbling that you're talking about. To me, it was 0 to 60. There are a lot of moments in the film I didn't believe from him. I don't think it's a good performance at all. For me personally, that's my personal opinion. It sounds like Jim likes it though.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was like, I like the movie. I think I'd have to go back and watch it again with an eye towards the performance.
And it's been a while for me too, but I remember specifically thinking, well, that's a good movie in spite of Adam Sandler. That was my reaction back in the time. So Matt, I know you disagree. Is there more that you want to argue, or are we just talking in circles?
That's it.
Something on the list that you guys want to go out and watch now that I put it on the list?
Maybe the Sudeikis movie, just because I never heard of it before.
Yeah, I'd like to watch Colossus.
It's colossal.
I
Excellent.
mean,
very good. It's time for evening summary. How do you guys feel? How did we do tonight? Do you guys have fun?
Yes, I would like to go back and do the game all over again, but not tonight.
There will be other opportunities. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, Jim, Matt, say goodbye to the audience.
Goodbye, audience.
Great job to Jim and Matt. And for those in the audience who have not seen Jenny from 1970, check it out. But in the meantime, this meeting of the No Name Cinema Society is adjourned.